We turn now to number 4 in our series on the book of Exodus, the plagues, and this is probably where we come to some of our most serious problems in the actions of God. How can the God who Jesus represented in the New Testament act in such a way, bringing such pain and cruelty to these people, the Egyptians, with the plagues? You know all about them, the way in which they unfolded. But why? What was going on? Well, as we saw last time, Pharaoh had decided that he wasn't going to let the people go. He was very stubborn and obstinate, and this was a power showdown because he believed he was God. And who is this God that you're talking about? No, I'm God. And I think at the heart of it, it wasn't simply human pride. It was a spiritual issue in which they're trying to deal with a very serious conflict, a bit like God dealing with Lucifer when he says, I will make myself like the Most High, and so on. Pharaoh was doing exactly that. So as we look at this biblical material, particularly there in Exodus 7 through to Exodus 10, let's think about why God chose to work that way. There's a good quote in the notes for this time from the Jewish Midrash. Why were the waters first smitten and with blood? Because Pharaoh and the Egyptians worshipped the Nile, and God said, I will smite their God first and then his people. It's who is the true God? And yes, God is willing to use power, to use coercion, to use force to convince people about the truth. It's not a pleasant dialogue, but it's one that God is forced into because of the stubbornness, not just of Pharaoh, but the whole of the Egyptian people and their culture, their religion, who said, we are supreme, we are the best, we have the true gods. And God is saying, oh no, you don't. Moshe Ben Chaim says this: the purpose of the 10 plagues was not to destroy Egypt, but to offer the primary lesson to that idolatrous culture. The God of creation and of Abraham is the only God, and Egyptian deities are imaginations. God desires the good for all mankind, he says. And that's certainly true, isn't it? That's what God wants. That's what he desires for everybody. But when people choose the opposite, what is God going to do? Is he simply going to say, well, you go your own way and do whatever you feel like? Yeah, he believes in giving us freedom, but he's not going to leave us in any doubt as to who he is, what these false gods are, and what your choices will lead to. In our day, we don't have worship of idols and these false gods, but we certainly have worship of many other things. And God is also trying to convince us that he is the one that you need to come to. Why? Because he's the only one who can heal. He's the only one who can save. He's the only one who can fix all the damage that sin has done. There is going to be a day of judgment. There is going to be a time of transformation. 1 Corinthians 15, we shall be changed. Those who choose God are going to be changed, and we're going to live forever with him. So it's a very serious kind of situation for us and for the people there in Egypt. What was God really trying to do? Not just to get his people to be able to leave, but to convince the Egyptians that their worship of all these gods, and you go through all of them, the flies, the frogs and everything else, these beings that they worshipped are false, which is why when Israel left in the Exodus, it was what they call a mixed multitude. Quite a lot of the Egyptians went along with those Israelites. Why? because they had been convinced by the plagues that their gods were completely powerless and this God was the true God. That's the only way that we can understand it. So the plagues, problematic as they are in terms of God's actions, show us that God is not only all-powerful, but wanting to get us to understand and to give up our false gods and follow only Him. Let's do just that.